So this almost sounds like a parody. It says Manchin rips big banks for net zero carbon goals. So these big banks are, for whatever reason, trying to get to net zero carbon emissions. And that's what Joe Manchin is ripping them for. Typically, when you rip on big banks, it's for them rigging the system or giving out shady loans to bring in them a bunch of profits, a bunch of subprime loans, or being in the pockets of politicians and supporting all of these really shady credit bills that are very predatory. So, but he's going after big banks for going for net zero carbon emissions, the best possible thing. It's legitimately a parody at this point. And so what it says is Senator Joe Manchin criticized major U.S. banks for setting goals to zero out their carbon emissions within decades, arguing that they should take a more realistic approach to fighting climate change. In remarks to a virtual conference of community bankers, Manchin voiced frustration with recent commitments from the biggest U.S. banks to completely offset all greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Quote, I would hope that a lot of the larger financial institutions would take a more realistic approach and not just a knee-jerking approach. Where shareholders are wanting to do this and that and everything, Manchin said during the Independent Community Bankers of America's annual D.C. summit. Along with targeting their own personal climate footprints, major U.S. banks have reduced their financing of oil and gas drilling projects, particularly within the Arctic region. Manchin, one of the few Democrats not in favor of a total transition from fossil fuels, stressed the need to preserve the, quote, balance that we have between the economy and the environment and take a measured approach to fighting climate change. He said that instead of limiting the activities of the fossil fuel industry, banks should help develop technology that could capture and reduce carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Quote, we've done more in the last 2 decades to clean up the environment than any other country. We can do an awful lot more by developing the new technology with carbon capture sequestration. You're not going to have a better climate by eliminating, he added, citing the rising use of fossil fuel energy across many developing countries. It says Manchin, whose home state has been hit hard by the decline of the U.S. coal industry, has been an outlier among Democrats on climate issues for several years. So this is what's going on, obviously. Joe Manchin, I'm sure he has personal financial stakes in the fossil fuel industry, but yes, you do need to eliminate carbon emissions as well as creating carbon capture technologies. And so basically what it is, I guess the West Virginia, is supposed to be all about the coal industry and all these jobs. There's not even that many coal jobs. You're talking about essentially destroying the entire environment for some jobs. And there, the plans that have been in place, like in the Green New Deal and these kinds of things, like basically the idea is these coal jobs, these jobs are so bad for the environment, it's literally more beneficial to pay them not to work. Like pay them money, good amounts of money not to work because it's beneficial in virtually every possible way. Especially because working in coal mines is horrifying. Like it's terrible. Getting cancer from inhaling all of the toxins that exist there, getting lung cancer. So you probably make that money back just off hospital bills alone, and then obviously the long-term thing. The climate really is the most important thing when you think about it. And at the rate we're going at right now, scientists are starting to call it a climate emergency because we aren't taking enough action to lower our carbon footprint. And so when you have too many carbon emissions going into the atmosphere that never leave, you get an extreme rise in heat very fast. And what a lot of people don't understand is it's not just like it's just going to be things that are associated with extreme heat. Like what happened in Texas, for example, is also linked to climate change because something happened in the polar vortex where it's just not used to that kind of heating. And so when you're heating at that rate, it's too extreme for the environment to handle, and it's going to essentially implode. You're going to have sea levels rise, which means that areas won't be livable anymore. You're going to have droughts because all of the water will be gone, meaning wars over water. You're going to have water anxiety. You're going to have increase of hurricanes. You're going to have more hurricanes, stronger hurricanes. We're already seeing all of this, by the way. Look at California right now. Every summer, it's basically on fire. You're going to see more fires, higher frequency, higher strength, droughts. All of this stuff is absolutely devastating for the economy, everything. And so this is going to be a tough deal because he's from West Virginia. He's representing his constituents. And even though the plan that Democrats are proposing are better for their constituents, it's going to be kind of difficult. How do you kind of, manage to reconcile all this stuff in terms of winning elections and stuff like that? I don't really know. But this is just, climate change needs to be taken more seriously. I don't know if people just don't understand it as much, but Joe Manchin is basically right now just, he's just such a clown and a piece of shit.